Hello viewers, you're welcome to the Women's Show. It happens here at Civic Space TV every Tuesday in the afternoon. My name is Patience Poni Aikoru and I'll be your host today. I hope you are as expectant as I am because we have a very interesting topic. All week, last week, conversations around the African Liberation Day have been taking place, within Uganda and Africa at large. However, today on the Women's Show, we are putting focus on the women in Uganda. What does African liberation mean to women in Uganda? Such an interesting topic, especially with this amazing panel. Yes, so I will just introduce them and then they will say hi as well as soon as I introduce them. I will start on my far left. Miss Maria Alessi, who has been a regular panelist as well on the Women's Show. Miss Maria Alessi, for me, I have known her as a king and also an ardent feminist and women's rights activist in Uganda. Yes, Maria, you might say hi to the viewers.
Hi viewers, thank you for having me on the show. It's been a while, but I'm happy to be back.
Okay, it's great to have you here, Maria. And next to Maria is Miss Winfred Mugambwa. She's an ecofeminist and a women human rights defender. Miss Winfred, would you like to say hi to the audience?
Hi everyone, I'm happy to be here.
Nice. We're happy to have you as well. Thank you. Just next to Miss Winfred is Miss Shamim. Shamim Nambasa, and she's the former guild president of Makerere University. She has been a trailblazer for young leaders out there. Shamim, you're welcome and say hi to the audience.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I think it's my first time on the Women's Show, but not the first time on Civic Space. Yes. My name is Shamim Nambasa, as she has said. I'm the 87th Guild President of Makerere University, but most importantly, the 5th female Guild President in 100 years. So being a space about women, I think I need to highlight that.
Exactly. And thank you so much for highlighting that. That gives us the energy to delve into this topic, being the 5th, guild president, female guild president at Makerere University is a big thing, especially for a world that we are living in. Our topic today, as I earlier on hinted, is about the liberation of women today. Do we really see it? And I just want to get to Maria Alessi, who is going to get us started on this. What level of liberation do we have, especially in Uganda? I know that in Africa, we have always talked about the struggle for liberation. Women have continuously had a very long path to being liberated, and we keep seeing news bulletins, saying a woman has done this, we have progressed in this, but is that actually what is happening in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Patience. So I think for me, when it comes to liberation, maybe 2 years ago, I would have highlighted like the number of women in public spaces or the fact that women are doing all these things. But now I think a little bit more about liberation, right? Because for many of us, liberation has been aspiring to be what the oppressor looks like. So for me, for many of us, liberation has been women taking space in public office, but is that actual liberation? Like when you think about the system in which we exist, for example, our political system, is that something we should even aspire towards, but rather rethink the type of political spaces that we have, because they're mad with violence, with corruption, and very often in Professor Sylvia Tamale's book, When the Hens Begin to Crow, she highlights the idea that whereas women were aspiring for a different world, we are now forced to go into this world that is created in a patriarchal system, and then we become the patriarchs of this system. And so for me, in thinking about liberation, I would think about it differently. So I think what I will highlight on the continent is that there's a lot of conversations about decolonization, because the history of the African Liberation Day specifically, which was last week on 25th May, was the idea of decolonization and liberation for African countries. Of course, that comes with having a conversation for women internally around liberation of women, but understanding decolonization, because we cannot walk away from the fact that our colonial history has an impact on the way we look at what liberation is for us as African women. And very, very often it has looked like becoming like white women, right? Aspiring to be like them, whether it's professionally, whether it's in the way we present ourselves, in the way we speak, everything that's important to us. And so for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, my answer would be at 3. Especially because we've started to have the conversations about, is this what liberation actually is? Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know, when you spoke about your rating, it just made me think about how much of liberation we need to delve into in the different spheres, because there's a way women, poverty has a face of women. Patriarchy is pushing women into, you know, and not just the patriarchy alone, but there's so many systems of oppression. And when Maria highlights about the public spaces, I thought about the women in politics like Shamim, who is already trailblazing in that, and women in the civil society like Miss Winfred. So Miss Winfred, I just want to pick on you just right there. You know, being in civil society, being an eco-feminist, and with the light of the changes within the climate talks that have been happening around, and inclusion of women, because we know very much how much women have really been pushed out of the talks and the conversations around that. And recently you've had a number of these talks. I've seen you on platforms speaking about women emancipation and women being brought to book, you know. So according to you, has this liberation delved down into civil society? Has it moved into your working space as a woman activist? You know, how do you feel about your liberation? And you could also give your rating as well, so that the audience can comment in the chat.
Thank you so much. I'll add on what Maria has said, even given my question. When we talk about liberation, or when we talk about such topics, what really puts me off that we always talk in plural. Yes, we talk about states, we talk about women, and even sometimes when we are talking about people, we are talking in plural. To me, I would even rate it at 2. Because I think the core of liberation, African liberation, was around capitalism and colonialism. But we can see within us, within the country, it is there. We were looking at the white, but now it is within us. Yes. So I would think we were on the path, and a little maybe excited about the liberation word, but missing out the real point, and missing out where they are putting us. Sometimes, even when you're in your personal house, there's where you put that nice chair, and then there's where you put that other stool. Yes, and that is where in Uganda, that is where they're putting us women. And when you look at our government, yes, there are women there are very many projects. They show that we are trying to develop women. We are having very many programs around women, but then women are not involved. Like, women are not, then there's no meaningful involvement. So when we talk about liberation, even when we look at politically, we have women in politics, but you will see they're suffering sexual harassment or even any other form of violence. Yes. And when you hear those stories, you can't believe, because liberation more comes in, yes, politically, socially, and economically, but would think that now the people in politics would be a little safer than even us who are the grassroots people. But again, it's a 2. We are still missing the point. Maybe you would think, personally, I would think that the people on the front line then, because it's been, you would see that even now the government, the people in the government, the president of Uganda was from another government. Are they still wrestling with the motive the people then? The motive those people then had, but they only changed the face value. Okay, how can we now how can we come in with our own, but just changing, but we are still going with the liberation then, but we had the excitement. So we are 2.
We're still at 2. Okay.
Yeah, and we need to shift away from making everything plural. Even when we are talking about women, that women are here, women are there. What is the percentage of women? We know the population of Uganda, women are more. Even when we look at the youth who are more, even still the female are high. But then we go to the percentages. You will see that we are doing really bad.
Okay, thank you so much, Winfred. You were speaking, and really, it's a lot that we need to think about. Our audience out there, what you think about the liberation of women, and when you speak about the pluralism that happens, it's about they are there, the women are there, but do we know the numbers that are individual, you know, in nature?
True.
So, Shamim, I just want to pick on you there. You know, you've been the 5th female president of Makerere University. I believe it wasn't easy for you, you know. So I wanted to speak to us firstly about your individual aspect of liberation. Have you been liberated as an individual, especially in political spaces? And then, is it uhuru for women today? You know, liberation dates back to 60 years and so on. But in Uganda, is it uhuru for women in politics? Or are they just speaking behind the voices of the men who are more into the decision making? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to appreciate the speakers that did speak before me. And I think we are all on the same page. That while we talk about liberation, we are looking at the Liberation Day. And I think for me, it's not 25th May shouldn't be about just the commemoration of what happened the 60 years ago when the OAU or the AU was being founded. But then we are looking at analyzing what is coming out of this. That if we are celebrating the Liberation Day annually, we are looking at what were the objectives of the AU, what did they put forth. And when we are talking about women in particular, we go back to what were the founding values, what are the pillars that are being talked about in the various strategies that the AU has. If we talk about the gender equality and women's empowerment strategy, that it relies on the 4 pillars of focusing on leadership, dignity. We look at the laws and policies that are in place for women in particular. And I would put my focus on the 4th pillar, which is leadership, because that is an area that I am passionate about and I have been into. But if we look at the generalization that they're going to say, yes, we did put in place a place for woman MP for every district. The number of MPs increased, yes, but still the females will still be less than the males. That's now the females increased at the parliament level. But if you went down to the district level, if you went down to the LC ones, we do not have women taking up those positions. We do not have the women taking up the essential positions of leadership, and not necessarily politics. But then we are talking about CEOs. We are talking about uplifting women in various levels of leadership. That is something that is still lacking. But then even the few women that we have there, are they liberated? When we talk about liberation, I think it should go beyond the word liberation. It goes to the mentality. Are we actually liberated in our minds and our mentality? That we are not having women who are flowers of patriarchy, that they are there, but then what do they stand for? What are they putting forward? And I think Maria highlighted something on that we have women who are just, they themselves are playing into the patriarchal mindset and seeing such things happen. So for me, I think my first and foremost value would be that we analyze through the grassroots, are women actually liberated? When we talk about poverty, employment, you find that we have more unemployed women as compared to the men. That even yet, when we're talking about employment, it is saddening that even as we sit here, there are a number of women, young women who have graduated with their degrees that are lining up to be taken to Saudi Arabia to work as maids. So I think if we're talking about liberation, we need to go down to these various values that we look at. If we're looking at the education system, how many are we looking at women that are actually succeeding in the area of academics?
Wow. Thank you so much, Shamim, for hinting that. And you know, the conversation is getting started. So if you are in the audience and you are enjoying this conversation, do comment what you think about liberation with our catchphrase of, is it really uhuru for women in Uganda? You know, are we independent as such? But then we have spoken a lot, you know, ranging from political, the social and economic aspects of liberation. And Maria, I just want to pick on you right there. You know, we have a number of systems of oppression and you have talked about them on different platforms before, but I just want you to bring a little light on such systems of oppression and their correlation to women's liberation in Uganda especially, and even Africa at large if you want to. And I just want you to specifically also hint on feminism, because I believe today, like you said earlier, even the women that we are trying to, move towards in liberation, we're on the same page. We assume we're on the same page. When you turn back, these women are actually stabbing you on your back, or the men themselves as well. So it's not even funny anymore. We shouldn't fight for humanity. I mean, as women, should we be doing that much? So Maria, please enlighten us on that, and you can share your views as well on how best we can break from all those shackles of oppression.
So I don't have a solution. I'll start from there, right? Because it's quite complex.
It is.
For many of us, and just for all of us here, we are all products of the system, right? All of us were born into capitalism as an economic system. All of us were born into patriarchy as a system of social organizing, right? And where you see we were born into ableism, that we on no day wake up in the morning and think about women with disabilities as the first thing on our minds. We think about all other women. When we say, like Winfred talked about, how we talk about people in a plural, like we are one collective of women, right? So we are seated here, we're having this conversation. Shamim is talking about women in leadership, but it's also like, what's the framing of leadership, right? Because we've received the narrative and the framing of leadership from what patriarchal leadership has always looked at. So there's that one person over everybody, and then the rest of us are in a following agenda, right? And we're all actively or inactively aspiring towards that, to be in the top of the pyramid, right? Every day, right? The things we do, the way we speak, the way we walk, the information we want access to, the people we want access to on a daily, like we're actively and it's because we've been conditioned to aspire for that. So from a perspective of systems of oppression, so there's quite a number, because for us, we have colonialism, which birthed a lot of capitalism on the continent, because if you know the history of colonialism, it comes along with the history of the Industrial Revolution, which was then the central pin of capitalism as we know it today. We have racism. We cannot move away from that, that while we think we don't live in Europe or North America, that racism does not affect us, but it affects us in more ways than we actually can think about. Of course, there's the usual patriarchy, the idea that women are subordinate to men, and you must, like, for you to be able to be at the top and front of things, you must present patriarchal traits. So how I lead, how I speak, the spaces, confidence, empowerment, money, yes, like all these things, right? And that's where, and so when you move away from that, it's also ableism, right? How we don't think about our society through the lens of persons with disabilities. And so there's all of these things. Classism. I think like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, there was a debate on merit and government scholarships. And that debate always fascinates me, because it happens almost every year at the same time, right? And it always fascinates me because people don't realize that conversation is a class conversation, that we're having a debate on, first and foremost, what Shamima said, what's the kind of access to education people have? Can we even discuss merit as citizens when a child in Nabila Tuk SS sees a specimen for a biology practical at the final exam, but they are supposed to aspire, they are competing with a student from Namagunga, from King's College, Budo, who have access to well-stocked laboratories from the day they start their courses, right? We're not talking about the fact that today government is propping up sciences while not putting into place infrastructure. Because you don't become a scientist after Form 4. You become a scientist because there's a whole process along the way. So all these systems meet up. And for me, I want to talk about liberation from an economic perspective specifically, because over time, I've come to realize that economics determines a lot of things. And economics in not the sense that people need to have more money in their pockets as individuals, but rather from the sense of one of the key aspects of the conversation on liberation right from the start was improving the standards of living of citizens. Remember, Africans then, because of the colonial system, Africans were the bottom tier. And while the colonialists went away, the vast majority of Africans still remain bottom tier citizens in their own countries, without access to food, without access to healthcare, without access to housing, without access to education. And these are bare minimums. Like, no one is aspiring for a Range Rover, no one is trying to have a 9-bedroom house with an elevator to take them to the third floor. They just want to live, and many Africans don't live. At the end of COVID-19, a vast majority of Ugandans fell into poverty. Today, when you look at, I was just looking at the statistics from Ministry of Finance, and this is what it looks like, right? This is 2019, 2020, and this is not yet post-COVID statistics. So you have 20% of the Ugandans are poor. You have 41.5 they are not poor, but they are insecure, right? So your one disease, so 41%. So this means that more than 50% of Uganda's population actually lives in poverty or at the line of poverty. So someone in your family gets cancer, someone is going to leave school. Your business collapses, one of you loses a job in the family. So that, and therefore the conversation on liberation becomes very, very difficult. And while we're all aspiring, we keep telling people, I usually, and stop me if I'm over talking, right?
No,
while
we're enjoying.
While for many of us, it's always work hard, save, invest, what. There's an economic system where you're set up to lose. We might be here thinking, oh, we are secure because we are young, but many of us are going to be old and poor. Because when you're older, capitalism hates you. So old people are not seen as valuable because they don't have the labor they're bringing into the system. So while you're making money now, it's going to get more complicated later. So I'm going to stop here for now so that we don't. I just want to,
before I actually move to the other panelists, I just wanted you to hint on the aspect more on we have spoken about liberation, right, from individual countries, every country being liberated. So do you think that in Uganda, our leaders that we have put in parliament or in office, in government parastatals, are they intentionally making women still continue in the shackles of oppression, or is there something that can be done to break away from that?
Of course, look at the budget figures that have been going around. Right? The budget does not reflect the actual, like we've talked about poverty, right? I've just given you the statistics. The budget does not reflect the lives of these people. When medical interns, there was a demonstration, medical interns plus senior health officials, I think is what they are called. They striked. Which people are going to suffer the most? It is always women, because women are the caretakers within hospitals.
Actually, as we speak, at Kawempe Hospital, pregnant women were being sent away because they didn't have SPs.
And interns are the core, but we've just seen a budget from the Speaker's office and the Deputy Speaker's office. But the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker are going to come and say, government needs to allocate money, right? So the system, and this goes back to the system. Remember, the colonialists left, but the system did not go.
It did not.
So we just propped ourselves into, so I move away from being Maria, ordinary Maria today. I'm going to become the Speaker tomorrow. And I can assure you, with all the English I've spoken today and conversations of liberation, the chances of me doing exactly what Anita Among is doing, or Deputy Speaker, whoever, are just the same. Yes. So again, the system creates the people who function for it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Maria. And key to note that our audience should not forget is that despite us celebrating in the liberation in quotes from colonialism and whatnot, as African women, we still remained with a certain sort of, struggle that we're still cropping with, and yet it has to end, and we can't go on. It's been 60 years. It's no longer funny, because we are actually biting the hand that was feeding us. The fellow women we sat with on decision-making tables are going backwards and cancelling our names and saying, no, we no longer need Maria, we no longer need Patience, and it's going to go as a circus. So Winfred, I just want to pick your mind as well. Conversations have been going around about civil society, women activists saying we are camouflaging in the names of the organizations we head, and we want to just get more funding, and yet we are not actually doing the work that is intended for it. So how are women liberated, especially the audience that we are speaking to as women rights activists, you know, the women that we are trying to front for liberation as individuals, like you said, you know, how are we able to break them off the shackles of NGOs that are actually not functioning to the desires of liberation? Because I'm sure you're going to share with us how what challenges the NGO world has faced, and also what challenges you as an individual has faced while working with these women, and maybe the correlation to the hindrance of their liberation. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'll start with, I can't leave it on my mind. When Shamim gave us an example of women who have been sent away from Kawempe Hospital.
Yes.
Was it last week or last week but one, when, is it Honorable Nyakato visited Hoima Hospital, Referral Hospital?
Yeah.
And when Maria talking about it's the women who suffer. She talked about something, she found a dog in the women ward, and she was asking, what if the dog eats someone's baby? What are you going to do? And these women are sleeping down. So women suffer. And back to however much I have to appreciate, I have to appreciate women in NGO, in civic space, because they've done a lot to see that women are empowered, women are liberated. But we have to look at, you talked about funding.
Yes.
Why we are still prisoners, it's because when you see, Maria talked about the structures. When you see the way this funding is structured, you can't expect someone to empower someone when they are not fully empowered. What am I trying to say? We are still being exploited. We are doing the work. You can look at very many NGOs when they are doing projects worth millions, but when they're just paid something that can't be even cater for 20% of their needs, and you're expecting this person to fully deliver, to fully empower the other person. First of all, for them just not even having enough earning, they're not empowered enough to empower someone. Yes, for you to empower someone, you must be empowered. So we are pouring from either empty cups or half fully cups, and we don't want to empty our cups. Yes, so that also hinders so much. Women are doing a lot of work. In NGO, women are doing a lot of work, but still you see there are still limits. There are still limits. Now these days in spaces of women, you'll see very many people advocating for men involvement. I have really not understood that so much, however much we know that we have to be inclusive and we have to work together. Yes, and mostly I tell myself, I love when let men create those spaces and bring the women to do work in those spaces. But you'll even see that as much as women organization are trying hard, but sometimes they're even limited by some laws put in place. Yes, they're limited with the structures. We'll talk about. I'll go back to our main barrier and our main problem. Our main problems is the society. Are the structures from the society. And then you will see that the government consults from them, and you will see women are always at the bottom level. And these societal structures shape the superior and the inferior. And where do women fall? And when you're implementing, where do you fall? And when you're going to visit, let me say you're going to implement in this, you go to areas. There are areas where people's mindset are still stuck.
True.
Even when someone went to school and they know this is wrong, but back in their village where they stay, the societal structures still hold volume, that they will still silence the women. When we look at the when in fact COVID helped us see the reality of what is going on. COVID helped to show where our government is really doing around women. And we saw that, I saw that government has good plans.
Yeah.
Government has put on paper, very good programs
and policies.
Yes. They sit in these rooms. Can I call them the right thinkers?
You can use your quotes. Use your quotes.
You can use the quotes, yes.
Those who think that they are the right thinkers will sit and think for the different populations. It's like me, Winfred, taking me to think for people for Karamoja. Now the Minister of Karamoja is a what? You know? Taking Winfred, so the people who think that the right people sit and think, and in fact they think, when you look at paper, it's the right things on paper. And this sometimes also goes back to us, the NGOs. We sit and think, I'm in Kampala, but I'm thinking for people in Soloti. I'm in Kampala, but I'm thinking for people in West. On paper, it will look good, but implementation, and I'm giving someone else to implement my mind. They don't know at the back of my mind where I was coming from. But remember, I was thinking from my village, my people, and now trying to impose my experience on a different population or on a different community. And that is cutting across. So it still goes back, because women are found already at the bottom line, we still remain there, because even what they are thinking for us is not the right for us.
And so just following up on what you just said, especially on the aspect of funding and then the right thinking in quotes, could you maybe tell us what you think would be the solution, or part of the solution that we can derive in order to have to reduce these institutional challenges that we face in NGO levels, and also the audience that we're speaking to, the Ugandan women? How can we liberate them? Is there any sustainable plan that is there?
First of all, we need to have meaningful engagement at all levels. We need to have meaningful engagement involving the right people at the right stage. That is one. Until we accept to have a conversation about the structures, political structures, societal structures, economic structures, and the conversation is going to be hard, especially when we get to the norms and the beliefs. The conversations are really hard, but we need those conversations. If we are to say that we truly want to liberate ourselves, we truly want to liberate women, because you can't sit down and go to, I have someone who told me they have in their village, in their culture, it is the women who can work. They dig, but it's the man to plan for that garden. If it grows, it's them to take,
and it gets back to them.
So are we ready for such conversations? Are we ready to talk about the when you look at the Bible, by the way, to me, I'm a believer, and to me, when I sit and read the Bible, when I look at submission in the Bible, to me it means differently, because even in the Bible, you will see from the book of Genesis. It was the women on the front line. You see every liberation every achievement in the Bible, there was a woman. Yes? So to me, we need even to sit down and have a conversation about submission. What does really submission mean in our society? How do we have to shift that conversation? And the other point is, away from having a rightful conversation around those structures, I'm seeing women in different positions. But when you go deeper and say when there is a scenario, you'll even go on the scenario of the Mabati. You'll see that at the core front line, it was a woman. But again, when you go deeper into those discussions, these women are sometimes just put in position to show that we are having women in this position, but the actual implementer, the actual person, not even implementer, because it's the women implementing, but the actual person running these projects are men. So can we really have the right people in the right position, and we have the right people in the right positions, but can we have even the women in those positions also be given full powers to do their work?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Winfred. You speak so much about the effective inclusion of women, because yes, we might have the inclusion of women, but are they effective? Do we have transformation that is, being put to place? And Dr. Shamim, now that I've added doctor to it, people have continuously celebrated on media pages, the women having land rights, women having social inclusion, women being in political spaces and all that. But according to you, do we actually have gender responsive, policies in place that can actually liberate women in Uganda? Especially, you spoke about the medical, the medical interns have been striking. Maybe you can tell us more about that. The impact gets back to us as women, and we can't do away with that talk. So maybe you could enlighten us more on that and what you actually think is the challenge that we have. Is it political? Is it social? Is it us ourselves, the women that are seeking for liberation, that are the problem? Yes.
Okay, thank you. I want to first highlight on the issue of the medical interns, because I am one of them. I'm a pharmacist who is awaiting internship. And this internship was supposed to have started on 3rd April of this month. However, we completed school in May of last year. So it's now a year long, seated at home, waiting to be deployed to do internship. And the worst bit of it is that I can't get a practicing license. I cannot work anywhere without doing the mandatory internship. So that is now the biggest issue. But while we may look to be the mainly affected group of people, we have the Ugandans or the patients that are going to these hospitals. And it was a recent when I heard about the pregnant women who are going to Kawempe Hospital, and they were being told to go back to their homes because there is no one to attend to them. You find that there is only one surgeon who is attending to over 100 pregnant women. And for Kawempe, it's you come give birth and go, because we don't have space, we don't have beds. Either you're going to be on the floor if you need to wait longer, but if you're in a good state, you're discharged there and then. So we are saying that the biggest people, that the biggest affected population are the Ugandans, but then majorly it's the women that are coming to these hospitals to give birth. It's the women that are bringing their children. It's the women that are having to take care of their families when they're sick and all that. So I think it's a question of where are our priorities as a government and as a country. That if you are giving a budget of over some good number of billions, you're giving people money to give donations, but then you claim not to have money to fund medical interns. A medical intern gets about 1.5 monthly or 2.5 around there. So I think it's a question of priorities. Where are our priorities as a government and as a country? But then if we talk about women and these policies, there are quite a number of policies about women, a national policy against female genital mutilation, policies on gender equality, police even at different levels, even at Makerere University, I know we had one against sexual harassment. So we have all these policies in place. And I have always said that the problem with Uganda is not lack of laws. We have laws almost about everything. But then it's a question of implementation. That are we being intentional about these things? If I'm more familiar with the law against sexual harassment at Makerere University, but if someone went to report, they're going to ask them, do you have evidence? Did you collect it? And how was I supposed to do something like that? So I think we need to be intentional. That even if we had one policy about a particular issue and we are seeing that it is implemented, it's better than having a million that are actually not being implemented. So for me, I would think that it's a question about being intentional with how we want to see these women in these places. That if we talk about appointment of women, we have the Prime Minister who is being questioned around the Mabati issue. But then when you go deep down, they tell you, no, it was actually the PA. It was maybe the PSO. You find that at the end of the day, these women are there to depict that we are having empowerment. We are having this affirmative action, but yet in actual sense, they are not the decision makers. They are not the ones that are actually occupying those positions in the actual sense. So for me, I think it's a question about us being intentional with women's rights, with women's freedoms, women's liberation. I was in Arua recently and interacting with some mothers, and someone said, me, I would be very happy for my daughter to get married. They are happy to see it is an achievement to have their 15-year-old getting married before she gives birth at home. So if we are still having such kinds of mindsets, then I don't think we are at the level to be talking about liberation of women.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Shamim. I just want to make a follow-up question on, the changing trends today. Young women are using the internet more than ever before, and it's the talk of the day, digitalization. So how best can we leverage digitalization? And just before that, I just wanted to hint on that, and then we'll go for a break. Yes, and then get back on that conversation of the contemporary world. Yes, how best can we leverage the internet to liberate women in Uganda?
Yes, thank you. I think if we are talking about the internet, we are seeing so many platforms. We have TikTok, we have Twitter, we have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, we have very many platforms that I think would be the best avenues for us as young people and as young women to use to advocate for our freedoms, our rights, liberation, and spreading the message. But then the problem comes in now when it goes into cyberbullying. And maybe we have seen a lot of young women trying to get approval, that someone is looking for likes, is looking for retweets, that I have 5K likes. But then they are posting pictures that are depicting nudity or indecency because they feel that is what society wants and is interested in, and that is what is going to get them out there. So for me, I think if we are looking at internet leverage, it would be how do we get these young women to believe that it's not about the engagement you're getting, it's not about the number of likes, it's not about the retweets, but rather the message that you're putting outside. That you'd rather put out a message that is going to reach a few people and it is actually carrying sense and depicting you, a young woman, for who you actually are or want to be, than wanting to look for approval. People want to get approval from the general public, and it's costing young women a lot.
Okay, thank you so much. And our listeners and viewers out there, please do like and subscribe to Civic Space TV. You are watching the Women's Show. I have an amazing panel here, and we have been talking about what Africa liberation means to women in Uganda. Please do comment on whatever we have been speaking about. We have had the recent conversation on digitalization and the technology that is in place. And so we are going for a quick break, but do not touch the dial. Thank you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Thank you so much, our audience. We are back from the very short break, and we are still on the Women's Show, Civic Space TV, and we are discussing a very important topic on what Africa liberation means, to Ugandan women. And earlier on, we have had conversations around the political aspects, the civil society, leadership, the systems of oppression, which we also delved into. You do not want to miss what is left of our conversation. African women have had such a long road to liberation, you know. We have some gains, but there's still a whole uphill that we have to climb. So Maria, I just want to pick on you, you know. Dr. Shamim had earlier on mentioned what the internet is like, how we can leverage it for liberation. But then every time women are speaking out, the internet is awash with people's emotions. People can't let us live, you know. We can't have a we can't have a life. So the internet is always awash with exclamations. Exactly. Like we don't even mean harm to them. I mean, we're trying to explore options of liberation because there are so many and we're human beings. So I just want you maybe to share with us what you think of that, especially with the bills that are coming up, the sexual offences bill, the marriage bill. They can't let us cohabit in peace. And yes, and maybe also, as the internet is very progressive, what you hope to see as well, you could share with us what you really hope to see progressively for the actual liberation of women.
Maybe I'll start from here. Is the internet actually progressive? Because you see, we often forget that the internet is really just an extension of regular human behavior. It's even worse than our everyday behavior in public, because I can create an entire pseudo identity and say the things I wouldn't say to Shamim face to face or to Winfred. So now I have the courage because there's this layer behind me, right? Sorry, in front of me. So it's easy. So for me, in terms of the internet, the internet has created platform, right, in terms of access to information, even beyond social media. Of course, the vast majority of us depend on social media for a lot of things, but I think access to information, like today I didn't have to go to the Uganda Museum or the National Library to find out information about Liberation Day, how different people have celebrated it and the themes and that, like that's literally on our fingertips. But of course, that's also for a certain class of people, a certain languaged people, because a woman who's not been to school in Karamoja is not going to use the internet, because we don't have a vast form of internet in a Karamojong, right, for them to speak. And I think I've said it wrongly, but I really apologize. So I think for me, in terms of, there's something Shamim had said earlier in terms of what women should be doing on the internet. And that's a part of the problem, right? That there is a certain frame of what is the okay, well-behaved woman who should exist in public, right? Because all I'm doing is posting myself fully dressed and writing a whole paragraph of motivational speeches, then I'm the right woman. While the woman who's half dressed and looking for likes, the truth is we're all looking for likes. True. Let's not pretend like when you put your wisdom there in your suit, you're not looking for likes. You're actually looking for likes. The only difference is your likes don't have a multi-billion sexual exploitation industry behind them, right? So that's the difference. And so, and that what makes me say, let's think about structures, because the structure, the internet is only feeding into the greed that has been grown in us through capitalism, through consumerism, right? Because that's an aspect of capitalism. I think just moving on from that, for me, it's when you talked about we can't be and we can't, why can't women just be? Liberation is a war against power. Power fights back. Shamim has been a guild president. You ran on the National Unity Platform ticket, right? On any day, did you wake up and say, I'm running to be on the NUP ticket? And the people from NRM said, oh, we actually think you're clever. Come and join us. Right? No, power has got to push back. And that's exactly what happens when women have become vocal in our society, when they've refused to attach them, like their core existence to a patriarchal system, but also just to heterosexual men, right? There's been a pushback. So that pushback is even now using language of liberation. So women are saying, oh, the women in the 1920s were much better. They were more empowered. They have a point in the sense of the way work is distributed today, that you're pretending to be empowered, boss lady, doing everything, then also looking after children. You're going to be worn out and tired. Your mental health is going to constantly be on the cliff you're about to fall over. But it's also a pushback against women in public spaces, because women in the 1920s were happier in their homes and stuff like that. So there's there's a capturing of liberatory language and being applied to other systems of existence just to make it look more appealing. The same way empowerment captured women's liberation language and now forced women to aspire to be like men. And that is not what we're looking for. And when I say aspire to be like men, I'm talking about working, being in the public space in a certain specific way without changing the way the system is structured.
Yeah.
The final thing I'm going to say on this conversation is that understanding that liberation is power, understanding that liberation is a fight against power, that the systems that exist, the ones that I mentioned earlier, colonialism, now what we call neocolonialism, what we capitalism, patriarchy, these are systems of power. When you push against them to be free, there's going to be a backlash. And the easier thing, honestly, the easier thing is to aspire to assimilate into the system, because there are minimal rewards for aspiring. There's the good woman syndrome, right? The good women who are sexually conservative, for right of a way to talk about, for lack of a better way, the women who going to only sleep with this one man, and the ones who are saying, hey, me, I'm having sex with people, and what they are. I'm not framing that as absolute liberation, but I'm just trying to draw the example of there is backlash against those women because they have removed themselves from the control of their sexual system, their sexual behavior through the lens of only for a certain purpose, right? Now, in understanding those power systems, I'm going to invite us to think, to task ourselves with the difficult work of doing imagination differently. Like, what does women's liberation look like when we are not trying to co-opt ourselves into capitalism? When we are not trying to become CEOs of Fortune 500 companies that are exploiting other women, but we're going to be like, oh, 50% of our top leadership is women. Oh, we have more women in boardrooms. Oh, we have more women in parliament. When that same parliament debated consent. Consent. We debated what consent is. We quickly forget, right? And supported it. That same parliament is busy chipping off on your sexual and reproductive health rights. That same parliament, the conversation about cohabiting and how it becomes marriage, that's a conversation to have, right? Yes, there's a family policy, a draft family policy with the Ministry of Gender. If you read that policy, you will pass out. Because I read it and laughed out of sheer mockery, because I was like, are we okay? When Winfred said right-thinking people, maybe it's because we created these hierarchies in society. That what do you mean that the woman in Nabila Tuk doesn't know what she wants? The problem is what she wants does not reflect what you want for her. Of course, understanding that they're also products of a system. So for me, in the spirit of liberation for African women, noting that we are not even where we think we want to be. Like, we have just entered the system and we are faces of the system and we are pleased with that. But we're not actually experiencing liberation. So then what does liberation, answering the question of what does liberation actually mean for us as African women existing in this structure that was given to us by colonialism? I'm not saying that what was there before colonialism did not harm women, but now there's something where this is the system we're dealing with. So what can we think about as alternative ways for leadership, for dignity, for improved standards of living, for economics? What are the alternatives? What does liberation look like, which centers our humanity and centers our dignity and values us as people beyond labor and beyond, because labor is also being reproductive labor, right? So thinking ourselves beyond labor. Thank you, Patience.
Thank you so much. Maria has given us a blow, you know, and we have a lot of questions to think. This is a conversation we can't just have over an hour, but we can continue chatting right there on our channel, Civic Space TV. So Winfred, as I also get to you when you're giving your concluding remarks as well, I just want you to tell us more, Maria spoke about the structures feeding into greed, So specifically the structures that are cultural in nature in Uganda. Women in Uganda still face, I don't like to call it teenage pregnancy because I feel like it's sanitized rape, defilement.
It's rape of children.
Exactly. It's
rape of children.
Rape of children, defilement, and we still camouflage and call it teenage pregnancies. We see culture being a big backlash, FGM taking shape. The men still are fighting back, like Maria already said, power, It's a it's a conversation on power imbalance.
Patience, can I just disrupt you?
It's
I think I'm
okay.
going to move away from the language of like the men are fighting back to the system
Even
is
the
fighting
women,
back, right?
actually,
Because
yes.
part of that system is women who are benefiting from it, also pushing back, right?
It's a whole system.
Yes, so like the patriarchy is pushing back at liberation.
Beyond even patriarchy, capitalism, and all the systems that Maria has spoken about. What is liberation to you? What do you see it as? And, beyond even just the cultural systems that I have hinted on, because we're still facing the big loom of a mountain we have to climb.
I'll still pick it starting from where you had asked around digitalization.
Yes.
And many times it is really helping and it has gotten us somewhere, but many times we speak from the position of privilege. Yes? Most of the discussions around digitalization is around, it's coming from privilege. Because most of the people accessing or using are now digital are people who have that privilege. Yes? And I want to speak from now trying, because I can't say that I'm not privileged because I even have a smartphone here, I have the internet. But I want now to just put myself in the shoes of the women who are not privileged. And remember, we are moving with the notion of not leaving anyone behind. If we are to look at sustainable development. And to me, liberation is, if we are talking about liberation, we can't live talking about sustainable development. Yes? But again, we are mostly speaking out of privilege. If we say we are moving digital, our government, if I'm given a chance today to Winfred, we want you to speak to the president and you're given 5 minutes, I'll just tell him, even if it's 1 minute, I'll tell him we are missing the president. We are missing the Museveni of 1986. Yes? Whether it was just a face value, whether it was just, we are missing that person because of the things they told us, because of the way we thought the things are going to be as women and how they started. So we have tried, still out of privilege, we have started naming things like teenage pregnancy because they suit. Yes? We are running away from telling people that you're a rapist. You are raping children. You're a defiler. You're this. We are running away from the exact words because we want to look like how a woman is supposed to be. Yes? We are running away from truth. We are running away from... We don't want to annoy people. We don't want to, but the truth is we are detaching away from the people. We are detaching away from the women because majority of the women are the grassroots women. Majority of the female youth are people in the villages. And when we try to massage, we use the language that fits the woman tucking in, that fits the Winnie here, not the Winnie who is a housewife. We are detaching away from the real people. We are detaching away from the real problem. Yes, a lot of exploitation is going on. I don't want to talk about where liberation coming from because most of the forces we are fighting were external. But right now in Uganda, most of the forces we are fighting are internal. Exploitation. Yes, we are seeing women being exploited than nothing. Even in big spaces. Even doctors, female doctors, they can tell us. Even people in parliament, women in parliament, seeing a woman in parliament and sitting and weighing, trying to look at their profile, because some of them their past, I'm just reading it, and seeing the person seated, like, and I can give an example of some women I'm not going to name, but when you see some women in parliament consenting to supporting to things like consent, supporting the sexual offences bill in the name of some things they are promoting something. What is promotion? You get it? And when I sit and read about their bio in the past, I see we are having different people. We are having different people. And what is the problem? Why are women running from their cells to please? And then having a different, because when I read about a person in parliament right now, and I read about the work they were doing before they came to parliament, I just ask myself, are these people mentally well? Are they just now being corrupt? Or they are confused? So I also get confused. Then I go back to, we really need to go back to the drawing board. There is nothing wrong with us women going back to the drawing board and see where did we go wrong. Not only the women in parliament, but also women in NGOs, every space, women at workplaces. Personally, I was fired from my workplace at 2020? But it was after sexual harassment. And women, somehow, I don't blame them because they really needed to secure their jobs. But more of women were supporting this man who was sexually harassing, not even me, because me, I came out and spoke. But a million women were not speaking. But women were supporting this man, this man and other men in that organization. And I think we really need to go back to the drawing board and look at liberation. Are we saying that back then, the women we read about, women were supposed to do this, women were supposed to be home? Even there, do we like that? If we are looking at liberation, let's go back on the drawing board. Let's look at exploitation. Let's look at violence towards women. Let's look at poverty. Let's look at everything and analyze it and speak truth to power. Not until women go back and start speaking truth to power and start being real like they were before, like how we were before. We are not even men. Me, I don't blame men. Men are just using us, and we are not children. We are women who understand. Let's not be used. And we are the problem. Let's not be a problem to our own selves. Let's think about liberation for women with truth, with equity, with equality, and with honesty.
Wow. Thank you so much, Winfred, for also ending with a big, big, big blow there and a lot for us to think about. Ladies and gentlemen in our audience, we are about to come to the end of our show. However, Miss Shamim, Dr. Shamim, I would like to pick your mind as you conclude on crisis management. Does Uganda need another pandemic to show that there's a certain class of people that needs to be liberated, or that there's a certain group of people that needs to be made a priority? Because I believe liberation is also a question of priority, especially for the power imbalances that we have seen and the different systems of oppression. So for you, maybe you could hint on how do we manage crisis in order to liberate women in leadership, women in politics, and maybe conclusively, without leaving anyone behind, what do you think liberation should be like for the specific groups of people I've mentioned to you?
Yes, I think we need to go back and revise the parameters. What are we using to see that we are actually succeeding? That what are you basing on to evaluate if actually people are liberated or not? Is Shamim being guild president of Makerere University being used as a parameter to say that now we have women being empowered and liberated because we have seen a Shamim being guild president? Does that mean that women are now actually raising up to take up leadership positions? And I think that is something that we need to go back and reevaluate. What are the parameters we are using? What are these yardsticks that we are setting for us to be able to measure that we are having liberation of the different groups, and majorly as women ourselves? But then when we talk about crisis management, I don't think we need another COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think we need to see more young women getting pregnant, or we need to see all these things happening. I think we have enough examples to look at. We have had enough experiences, and that should be, I think people are choosing to be blind to these things, that the data is there. The information is there. Everything you're looking for, a percentage of unemployed women, you just go to Google and get it. Percentage of women attaining education, percentage of women who are being exported to Saudi Arabia are there. So we don't need any other pandemic. We don't need any other crisis, but then we need to be intentional. We need the government to be intentional that you want to see people, you want to see more liberated women, you want to see more women that are actually achieving. And I think it's a personal issue that we shouldn't look at generalization. Is Shamim liberated? Is Maria liberated? Is Patience liberated? And until we go to the grassroots, and until we go to understanding that these people at the grassroots, other than the women that we see here, are actually liberated, I think then we are not yet there. We need to have more conversations surrounding liberation.
Thank you so much. So our audience, our conversation has been very interesting. What Africa liberation means to women in Uganda, from the intentionality of it, individuality, and then the pushbacks that we have highlighted. There's a lot that we have to do. But the big question for us is, how then can we jump over all these hills, all these systems of oppression that keep pushing us back? Because it's not just the women, there's so many other different sects around that need that liberation more than ever before. Tune in once again every week. On Tuesdays, we have the Women's Show at Civic Space TV. I want to thank the production team, and to you, our audience, that always is there with us. Do not forget to comment. Thank you so much for coming to the show.